You're not gonna make it. No, you ain't gonna make it. You're not gonna make it, but you can. Welcome to You're Not Gonna Make It, the show where I discuss threats that may prevent you from making it. I'm Kevin. There's a guest here today. It's my friend, Megan. Hello, Megan.
Hello, Kevin. Thank you for having me on this fine, cloudy day in Utah. I don't know what the weather's like in Chicago, but I'm hoping it's better than Utah.
No, it never is. I don't know why we
okay.
say that.
That's like my small talk. It's like shitty. So there it is. There's my obligatory weather talk, and that's all I will say.
Speaking of obligatory small talk, the topic for today is going to be office culture, which I'm sure many people can relate to. I hope none of my coworkers listen to this ever.
I mean, do they know that you have a podcast?
No.
Okay.
No.
Keep it that way then.
So they definitely won't, but if they do, it'll be interesting, I guess. So I say office culture, but it's more like obligation and threat of unemployment for a lot of this stuff. So yeah, I'm sure most people are familiar with like the stuff you have to do for offices. You have to show up, you have to dress a certain way, you have to attend pizza parties, you have to have your cubicle to say, hi, Tom, hi, whatever, all this.
We all have a Tom. Like, I feel like every place I've worked at, there's been a Tom.
Yeah, and it's not that these people are terrible, bad people. It's just that we don't really have to be in the vicinity of each other. We can just be home. So, especially nowadays, we can just be home. So the fact that we have to be in proximity of each other and have to make small talk, have to say, oh, do you want to go out for lunch sometime? Like, I don't. So this is actually unrelated to actual office stuff, but it's related to job stuff. Back when I was a personal trainer, I worked at this place called Focus in New York City. And they, I shit you not, had sleep pods in their headquarters. And they encouraged you, hey, why don't you stay, get to know the trainers, learn, sleep in the pod. I thought to myself, there's no way. There's no fucking way I'm going to sleep in a pod at this place. I don't care what's going on. That was absolutely wild. I don't know if you, Megan, have bunk beds at your office or anything like that.
I'm not aware of that, though. I'm sure people will just use whatever's there.
People will sleep at your job? Do they do that? Like sleep under the desk and stuff?
Thought that comes to mind, back when I was pumping breast milk, they had this little room called the mother's room, and it's like just a room for one person, and it's locked, and you have to key in. And I'm like, I use that place a lot to like take powers. So.
Oh, okay. That's cool. I wish I could. Okay, here's the thing. I wouldn't mind napping during work, but if you have a sleep pod, something about that is just fucked up to me. I don't like it.
Yeah, well,
they called it that too.
They're trying to keep you there. That's the thing. Yeah. It's like, it's a factor that's trying to keep you there. It's like, this is a completely irrelevant analogy, but what I think of is like, casinos, how they don't have windows and they don't have clocks, right? It's just two kind of like little details that, well, why is that? Well, the reason why is they want to keep you there and so that you don't have any sense of time. So I feel like offices, especially when you're required to go on site, they do these things on the surface. It's like, oh, it's fun, like ping pong tables. Like my office, it's like we're very much like the progressive, cool, hip. Like my CEO, he looks like the stereotypical like young dude, like ruffled, like rolled out of bed. He wears a hoodie and jeans. And, they kind of promote this like fun vibe. Oh, we're so progressive, like LGBTQ, which is all great. But I think underneath that surface, it's like, well, why? It's because we want to keep you here. We want to make it seem like you're going to like a super fun place, when in reality, it's still a freaking 9 to 5. You know?
They just want to drain you so they can make more money. That's the main thing.
It's all profit.
Use you guys as batteries, like in the fucking Matrix.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. I didn't know casinos did that for that reason. And I'm thinking back to when I worked at Equinox, that was underground. Obviously it's impossible to have windows there, but I wonder if that has anything to do with it. That was a kind of weird environment too. Although there were clocks, I think. Yeah. I don't remember. Maybe they did the same thing. I don't remember. But nowadays, while I do still help people lose weight, my day job is in IT. So there's a lot of, my favorite thing in the world is when I get meetings, when someone sends you an email on Friday at about 3 p.m. for a meeting for, a bunch of meetings for the next week. That
Right.
always gets me really happy and excited for the weekend. Even worse is when on Thursday, Friday morning, it's like, hey, let's assign a meeting on Friday at 4 p.m. Let's do that.
Yeah.
I don't know why people do this.
Like, who's awake
Literally,
and functioning at 4 p.m. on a Friday?
why do
Yeah.
people do this? How is that possibly the best time
Yeah.
for a meeting? Who cares? Everyone is mentally checked out at that period of time.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know. The only time I've had that happen is when a project manager did it, and that was really
Yeah. Yeah.
that was really frustrating.
I just feel like some people are out of touch with like how things really are. So I feel like this just depends on your company culture, and your manager. Because I've had managers who are really aware of that. Like, for instance, my job is not in IT. I'm an instructional designer. So I like build and create things all day. And the last thing that I want is for my flow to be interrupted, right? Like, if I'm in the middle of creating a course, if I'm in the middle of creating a video, I don't want to be like, have a 30-minute meeting to talk about bullshit, right? So like, I found that I've had many managers over the years, and some of them get that. They're like, hey, like, my IDs are in a flow state. I'm going to just book a call either first thing or at the end, so that I'm not interrupting their 6-7 hour block of time. And some people just don't, right? So what I've found, because like, I know this podcast is about like not just bitching on things, but solutions, right? Is I try to be vocal about that, and I try to like let my managers know, or my stakeholders know, hey, this is the nature of the work I do. I personally prefer if, like, whenever we do have meetings, they're, first of all, they have a purpose, right? So what you said, Kevin, of like, well, could this just be an email? Could this be a Slack? And then I'm like, and then I prefer if it's not during the middle of my day, if possible. Of course, that depends on scheduling, but like, if it's first thing or last thing, at least that gives me the uninterrupted block of time. And you might think, oh my gosh, like, why are you so vocal about that? But I found that like, when I speak very frankly like that, people tend to be very receptive. And they're like, oh, we didn't know that. Okay, thank you for telling me that, right? So you just have to be vocal about it if you want to see some change, you know?
I totally agree with you. When there's a meeting, let's say, 10 a.m., that's fine. Because once you get that done, it's good. But if
It's
they
early,
sign like
yeah.
11:30 a.m. or like 1:30, it's like,
Yeah, or it's like in
oh,
lunchtime, it's like encroaching in lunchtime.
yeah.
It's like common sense. Like, people have to eat lunch, or like people
Yeah.
have to pee. That's the other thing. It's like, but here's why I mentioned
Yeah.
that. It's like, calendars are visible, right? If I'm going to book a call with my team and I open up their calendars and I see, oh, Tom, let's bring back Tom. He has 4 back-to-backs. I'm not going to throw in a 5th back-to-back after the 4 where I can clearly see he hasn't had time to use the bathroom. You know what I mean? So I feel like a lot of this like corporate bullshit is like people just not having like the freaking common sense. A lot of this is unspoken, but it's like, if you're a human with like a decent heart and a working brain, you shouldn't have to be like, I wonder if it's okay to throw in a 5th back-to-back on Tom's calendar. Of course not. Can you let Tom pee? Like, can you let him go to the bathroom and grab a granola bar or something? Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Full disclosure, I don't think I have any coworkers named Tom. I'm just using a name.
you don't
But
know yet.
but that's the thing. I do see people do have their calendars visible most of the time. And even if it's not
Right.
the specific meeting or whatever, it says busy, there's a block. And when I see people that have like 3-4 hours straight of stuff, I'm like, I'm just not going to contact them at all. Cause I know they're going through it right now and they're not going to be able to
Yeah.
help anyway. So I'm just going to not do this at all. But I feel like some
Right.
people are like, oh, you have 3 hours of meetings and then a half-hour slot and then the 2 hours of meetings. Perfect. Let me stick something right in there. Some people do that.
Yeah, they do. And those are the people I hate, because they lack common sense. That's the thing. It's like, this is just basic human decency and courtesy. The only time it's okay to do that if it's like I've had managers do that to me, because managers notoriously have calendars like that. Like, I'm sure your manager, Kevin, like, that's what managers do. They have back-to-back meetings. That's their freaking job, right? And so the only time I will like claim that like 30-minute spot that's free is when they actively tell me, hey, Megan, like, this is the only time I'm free and we need to talk about this. Just go ahead and claim that spot. So that's another like basic etiquette, is like, if you're unsure, I don't know if you guys use Slack, Teams, whatever. If you're unsure, ping the person beforehand instead of like, just flat out booking it, which is just indecent, in my opinion.
That is something I wish more people did. There have been a few times where someone has basically we go back and forth in email a couple times and they're like, you know what, let's just have a meeting. They don't say that. I just see the meeting invite with like 9 other people. I'm like, why did you do that?
Right.
How considerate do you have to be to just hog that time from all those people? Half of those people have nothing to do with this, by the way.
Exactly.
So I feel bad for them. And that's one thing I've gotten to recently. If a meeting is listed as optional, if I'm an optional attendee, immediately decline. Not because I hate the people or I don't care about it. Sometimes I will actually get in there if I'm like, okay, this seems kind of relevant. I'll hop in there. But for the most part, if I'm an optional attendee, decline immediately, because I don't need to just fill up my calendar if it doesn't need to be filled. If I can have the time for whatever I need to do, then I'm going to leave it that way.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good tip. Another tip too, which I am hoping we're heading in the direction of like, how do we make meetings not only intentional, but like efficient, meaning like people, those people that like ask a question 1 minute before the meeting's supposed to end, and then they extend a 30-minute meeting to like a 1-hour meeting. Okay. See, those are the people that, again, have no common sense. So here's my tip for people. Okay. Here's my tip for people. Come prepared to the meeting. All right. So I will speak from an organizer point of view and an attendee point of view. From an organizer point of view, I like to give people pre-work. And I know people are like, ew, like, what's wrong with you, Megan? But there's reason for that. When I give people pre-work, or like, hey, think about this before you come to the call. Can you prepare this thing? It's going to take 5 minutes. That will ensure that when people come to the call, they have something to talk about. And it's not like, oh, let's spend 20 minutes like brainstorming. And like, you know what I mean? You're not wasting time. So from an organizer perspective, I like to do that. And then from an attendee perspective, I do the same thing, whether it's assigned to me or not. Like, hey, I know we're going to talk about XYZ in the meeting. So let me come up with like 3-4 bullet points to make sure I have something to contribute. And we're not just like filling the time with freaking small talk or dead air. Like for this podcast, for instance, Kevin, like I pulled up your outline and I thought about a couple of your points. Like, oh, hey, maybe I could mention this. Like that's my pre-work, right? So that makes sure that the time is like intentional. So that's
like an agenda.
Exactly. Yes.
Meeting agenda. So that used to be a bigger thing, but sometimes, like you said, people just assigning meeting. This is a topic. People come in, they just say, so this happened. I'm like, okay, this is going nowhere. And like what you said, this happens so often. It's like a half-hour meeting, 28 minutes in, and someone says, oh yeah, one more thing. I know right then and there, 15 minutes at least is added on. That's one of the worst things in IT, even outside of meetings. So this is another part of office culture, IT specifically.
Yeah.
In IT, usually there's a ticketing system. Basically, you submit a request for help, right? So you keep the documentation. People don't lose your problem, so they can actually get back to you. But what a lot of people do is they will just walk into your office, and then they say, "Hey, my computer's broken," and then your whole day is basically derailed. And the worst part is, at the end of this, if it's a quick thing, this always happens. I swear to you. If they come in for a very quick thing and they say, "So while I have you." There, I know 2 hours of my time is going to be completely fucking drained at that point in time.
I'm
like
guilty
the
of that.
office knocking.
I've done that a couple of times, so now I feel bad.
Yeah, you should. If someone is in the middle, if someone's like, if you can tell they're daydreaming, like it's fine. Like, yeah, sure, I'll have something to do. But if someone's in the middle of something, like I've had a situation where I want to say like 4 or 5 laptops open, and someone just walks in and say, "Hey, my computer's busted." Man.
Submit, please. Yeah.
But it'll be really quick. It makes me want to leave, basically.
Yeah.
So I really hate that. I really, really hate that. It's like the assigning a meeting on your calendar, but in person. It's really frustrating.
Right. I mean, it just comes down to boundary setting, right? I feel like I'm also trying to get better at this of like politely saying no or having the canned response. Like for me, the equivalent to that is like people asking for videos or courses or whatever that are outside of my bandwidth. They're like, hey, can you do this for me? Because I know it's what you do. I have a canned response like, okay, thank you for the request. Here's a form you can fill out and we'll add it to our backlog. So it's not an asshole response, but it's polite and it's acknowledging their request and it's adding it to the, to our system. So that's similar to you where you just have to be like in a polite way, hey, I'd love to right now, but you'll have to submit a ticket.
And the great thing about that is the ticket in their form is that it also creates friction because there are some people who, when you tell them that, they're like, oh, okay, yeah. And then they're in their head, they're like, I don't want to do that shit. Forget it. It's not that big of a deal. I'm not going to do it. So you save yourself some time because they actually don't want to go through the process.
Right.
So that's...
Yeah. Teaching them to self-serve and self-educate.
Yeah. So they can help them. They can help themselves instead of wasting everyone else's time. One thing I definitely want to talk about with office culture, I feel like this is it's related, but not quite office stuff. It's just the concept of commuting is a killer. I know you and I, we have mostly remote jobs. When we do have to go in, it's very, very frustrating because it takes time away from your day that doesn't need to be taken. I know for you, I think your commute was or is somewhere close to an hour at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which... it's not an hour. It's actually almost 2 hours every time that you have to go. That's the frustrating part. And the cool thing is, and I mean this sarcastically, is that you don't get paid for that time.
No.
That's, what would be really, really, really cool if your workday started when you left your home, when you had to actually go in.
I mean, yeah, then
That
I
would
wouldn't
be
be complaining.
fantastic.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, I wouldn't really complain either. That would be awesome. And then your workday ends. If you're an hourly employee, your workday ends once you actually get home. That would be really sick if that were the case. But commuting in general is just such a hassle, especially since COVID popularized work from home. Now most people don't need commutes. Obviously, there are some jobs you need commutes. If you work in a restaurant, you can't do that from home, obviously. But if you're working with computers, technology and stuff like that, you can just be home. So when, you have the obligatory, you got to come in, it's kind of frustrating because the real reason is, and this was told to me by a former CTO, is that, well, it's due to the building lease, or it's due to it's basically due to some kind of money or the sunk cost fallacy where someone paid for the building. So we're going to have you guys just come in anyway because we got to make use of it. Or it's a powered dick swinging move. I don't know. Some people do that too. Some companies.
That's one of my team's theories. You know this, Kevin. Like a few months ago, my company enforced the RTO. Thankfully, I was able to get an accommodation, but that's because they're like, oh, they finally realized I'm a top performer and it'd be dumb and they'd be losing money by letting me go. But I want to build on to what you're saying of I personally have no problems with the office, but it depends on your role and what you do and the reason why. Well, yeah, I know. For the most part, I agree with you. Most jobs can be done from home. For the people who are pro office, I get their point of view. And to that, I would counter, well, we need to think about what people actually do. Like, for instance, my role is I'm a builder. I'm not client facing in the sense that I speak to clients all day, or to your point, Kevin, of people will have to show up in a brick and mortar place, like a restaurant. Okay. I'm a builder. I can easily edit a video at home as I do in the office, right? Whereas other people on my team in my department are client facing. They have to consult with people. They have to it's a more talky kind of job. So for that, I understand if they would require, hey, at least 2-3 times a week come in. Right. So that's my problem is when something like RTO is enforced without nuance, when it's enforced on a company kind of blanket general level without regard for people's unique situations. Right. Again, some people have more privilege than others or freedom than others. I'm a single parent. You know that I obviously have more limitations than a single bro who's just growing around. You know what I mean? So when higher ups just fail to think about the nuance in people's unique situations and then they just enforce this same blanket wide, that's when I take issue because it's now you're reducing humans to just numbers and you're not thinking about them as humans with unique lives, I
don't think they ever have, Megan, because there's a department called Human Resources, and I feel like that's that's
what are they doing?
That's labeling humans as resources. It's kind of fucked up in the etymology anyway. But I agree with you. Back in my previous IT job where I was an IT bitch boy, I was doing desktop physical stuff, right? I had to come in twice a week. I hated it, but I understood it because I can't do physical stuff from home like that. It was hard to do. And I had to ship laptops out sometimes, stuff like that. So I understood that. But then when I leveled up to a more specialized position like I am now, I literally do not need to do anything that involves being at the office. Right. So me having to come in at all, it's kind of lame, but I understand they paid for the building. So I know why they're doing it. Yeah. But I don't think it's necessary. And
I think it's just a dumb excuse. Can you reallocate those funds for something else? Maybe they're not thinking outside of the box. So
yeah, and it depends on leadership too. In the old place, it was just is for the building lease basically. But in this new job that I say new, I've been there for over 2 years, but we got a new basically director for our department, and he's way more lax. Before that, we were doing a very slow kind of, we're going to come in twice a week, whatever. And then we got this new guy, and he's I don't really care. So then people actually, there was more working from home from now on. And the thing that annoys me about the previous attempt is that if literally everyone in IT in that department were to come in, there would be no physical room for everyone. That's the frustrating part. There's actually not enough room for everyone. So we have to do this kind of hotel spacing with the desks.
Yeah, we do that
most
too.
Most people have to work from. Yeah, so it's a bit of short-sightedness, and it has no nuance, like you said. This is turn from. And the weird thing is too, I don't know why some other companies do it. This doesn't affect us, but I hear Amazon doing it. I'm Twitter doing it. Why? why you know how rich you guys are?
Right.
You don't need to, like, here's the thing. If they just like sold the building or just, didn't force people to come in, they can get, first of all, save money on the building and then have people work maybe more. I'm not saying they should work more because they're from home. I'm saying like, so I've seen some people do it like, oh yeah, I'll do an extra 15 minutes because I don't have to commute. So whatever, right? I'll finish this thing up or whatever, right? They would actually get more if they just sold the fucking building and let everyone work from home. I don't know why they don't do that. I think it's a power trip thing for those companies, to be quite honest with you, but I don't know the actual reason. I don't.
Yeah.
So
and we'll never know. Like, this is a constant conversation that I have with my team, because like when the RTO happened for me, we were just theorizing of like, why are they doing this? It's so dumb. Like, and to your point, we were also saying similar sentiments of like, well, they could just sell the building, or so we're a property management company. We were like, well, why don't they convert it to a housing for like low income people? Wouldn't that be great? You know what I mean? Like, just think outside of the box. That's the thing. And it's, I try not to expend too much energy. Like, you know me, because I'm a stoic, but like, it's one of those things where, you know what? And unless you can crawl your way into the CEO's brain, you'll never know. And so is it really worth? It's
not worth it.
Yeah. Like, look for another job at this point. Right.
Yeah. So some things, there's some people can't be reasoned with, to be honest.
Right.
So
exactly.
I understand that entirely.
Yeah.
Let's see. I want to get into a little bit of the team building stuff. I don't know if your office ever has like team building events or meeting or like in-person meetings. Is that a thing that happens
just had it a couple weeks ago.
How was that?
Team kickoff. I mean, it's nice. I actually like the people I work with, so it's nice to socialize. But in terms of the activities we did, it's just like it's a waste of time. We did strength finders. I know a lot of corporate companies do that. Have you heard of it? It's kind of like, if you've heard of Myers-Briggs, that's another popular one of like, it's a personality test essentially.
I've heard of that.
Corporate. Yeah. So it's kind of like the Myers-Briggs, but it's like strength finders is this corporate test you can take that basically identifies what are your like top 5 to 10 strengths. And then how do you leverage that in context with your team? So like, for instance, I am a strategic thinker. So you should capitalize me in strategic positions. So I get that. But like, the reason why I'm so jaded about it is like, I've taken the test now like 4 times. And like, it's a good team building activity, but I don't really see anyone doing anything with it. You know what I mean? It's like, we have this like very like wholesome like team building session for like a week and we're talking about it. But then like, when it comes to my actual work and the projects that we do for the rest of the year, I don't see the leaders or anyone doing anything to capitalize on my strategic mind or to capitalize on Tom's social you know what I mean? Like, it's just this thing that like, why did I drive all the way here to like take a personality test and like, so
honestly, I'm kind of in the same boat. I have some complaints, but it's honestly kind of okay, the all staff meetings we have, because we go in, we get free food, and then we build some kind of weird paper airplane or something, and then that's it. It's like that kind of stuff. So it's like, it's fine. But sometimes the meetings are, I don't, like, by the end of it, I'm like, I didn't have to be here.
Right,
exactly.
You
know what I mean? Like, sometimes I'm like, I remember one of them was super, super irrelevant. It was about 40 minutes of discussing the deep finances of the place I work at. I'm like, I'm not going to do anything with this information. I'm glad I got to eat for free, but I mean, I didn't like, I don't think this meeting needed to be necessary. You need to bring in all the work from home people for this, but you can do that. By the way, I wanted to get to this before I forgot. One of my biggest pet peeves, and we've talked about this before, whether you're talking about Slack, Teams, whatever kind of communication. And basically the people, some people, I don't think many people do this through email, but just the communication when people ask for permission and wait for permission before actually unloading on you. And I'm talking about when someone messages you on Teams like, hey, and they will not tell you what the fuck they want until you say, hey. I've had this before. And I didn't respond. I'm like, I'm just not responding. And then later, it's like, hey, you there? You there? Like, you sent me about 4 messages there, and you could have just sent the original thing. And as I got back to you, it could have been done already.
Yeah.
I just want to let you know that. I didn't say that because I was in the position I would have gotten me in trouble or something. But I hate when people do that with the passion.
Was it a superior?
I don't understand.
That particular scenario, or was it just your... Okay, so that's why you were kind of like watching your words. If it was your teammate, would you have just like left them on red for like forever? Because that's what I do. That's why I ask, is like, I am that person. If you are just like, hey, you ain't getting no response from me, and you can say hey for 5 years, you need to tell me what you want. It's like you're wasting my time.
It was superior that I actually respected. So I'm like, I don't want to say anything mean, so I just won't say anything right now until a bit later. But there's some times where there's some people you work with. I'm like, I'm not going to be vitriolic, but I'm not going to hide in any way that I'm not really a fan of you at all. There's so many times where I just got into almost heated arguments in the past job as superior, and I'm like, I'm literally the best employee in this with this job title, so I know for a fucking fact you're not going to fire me, so I'm going to push back on this a lot because I know you're not firing me. I know for a fact you're not, because if you're left with the other guy, you guys are fucked. So I felt more free to do that, and I did do that with the other guy. Just leave him on red because I don't like that. It's dumb. Here's the thing. Basically, what it does, in my opinion, it teaches them that they are able to kind of beckon you like a dog. They're saying, hey, and then they expect you to get back to them first, and then they can tell you, as if you're like a little pet, like, here, come here. Let me tell you the command now. Like, no, please just tell me, immediately, or send me an email or something. But this like back and forth, walk on the fuck over if you want to have this kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is what does he call it? Asynchronous communication. Okay.
Right.
It's not like if I don't respond to you in 4 minutes, it's not like an invitation for you to get upset or to keep pinging me. Just tell me what you need. As soon as I see it, I will respond to it.
Yeah.
I know this happened with you a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this touches on a broader category, which I feel like is part of this corporate conversation of just like effective communication, which is something that I feel like a lot of people in corporate are lacking. And you can expand this beyond Slack to like real-time communication like this or meetings. Like I really respect and value people who know how to convey what they want to convey concisely and precisely, and they're not conveying less or more than they need to. I love people like that, right? Because I feel like it respects people's time and it makes people's time and work more efficient across the board. So tying it back down to like Slack, because we use Slack, it may seem like such a trivial thing, but like I feel like it speaks to a larger commentary and like, because if someone did the hey thing to me, right, it's in the context of Slack, but if they're constantly doing that, I can make inferences to how they are as a person in other situations. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, how might they be when I'm talking to them in real time? How might they be in a meeting? They're probably that person who asks that last minute question. You know what I mean? They're probably like, when I talk to them, speaking 10 sentences, but they could have just said one. You know what I mean? So I feel like this speaks to a larger commentary of like, people like learn effective communication. If there's one soft skill that I feel like is going to benefit you both like personally and professionally, learn how to communicate, because you're respecting people's time and you're being considerate of people's time. So that's my commentary on that.
Yeah, I feel very thankful because I actually like my boss a lot. We're on the same wavelength on a lot of things. He tells me like if a meeting is not optional, he's not fucking doing it. He wants to eliminate as many meetings as possible. And sometimes when I come to him, because there are some of these things that happen in terms of office culture where I'm like, hey, so this person was kind of like this. They kind of want to do this. Is this going to be a thing we're going to be doing? He's like, no, don't worry about that shit. Okay. I didn't know. Like, he's basically saying, it's nonsense. Don't pay attention to that stuff. Just ignore it. Just don't waste your time on that. I really, really appreciate that. And I feel like having a good culture is great. It's mentally life-saving, honestly. And that is I think that's part of the stats. Anyway, we should get into the stats part over here.
Okay.
I want to get into some numbers here.
Let's do it.
Okay. So this first stat here, 85% of employees are not engaged at work. I find this it seems a little high, but when I think about it, I get it. That makes sense to me. I don't know if...
now I have some follow-up questions. What do you mean by engaged? Like, how do you measure that?
I don't know. I like to kind of take these stats and just like create context for myself, because this is not
my mind is very analytical
data from this thing.
So now I'm thinking of the follow-ups.
I think what it means is that there's like no daydreaming involved at work, or they actually care. That's what I take it to mean by engaged, because I feel like 85% of people are not that. And I count myself most of the time as well. If I'm in a meeting, I'm, paying attention,
Right.
Otherwise, it can be hit or miss. Do you feel like this number is accurate?
It feels a little high. See, I have a lot of follow-up questions like, is this across all industries? You know what I mean? Is this like project specific? Because like, I'm like you, where it depends on what's going on, like what project I'm on. Like, for instance, tying it back to my strategic mind, if I am on a project where my strengths are not being capitalized and it's just like, yo, why do you even have me doing this? Then of course I'm not going to be engaged, right? Because there's no intrinsic motivation. But if I'm in a project where, you know what, you are capitalizing on my strengths and my interests, then I'm good. Of course I'm going to be more engaged, Yeah. So it depends what's going on.
I think it depends, but probably overall. Basically, I think the point of this is most people don't give that much of a shit about their job.
It's a
That's
job.
what I take it to me.
I mean, to that, I can stand with you because, like, at the end of the day, we're all adults who just need to pay bills, or most of us anyway. The ones who are not like rich entrepreneurs or YouTubers or influencers, those of us who are not that, the 9-to-5 people, we just need to pay the friggin' bills and we need to put food on the table. So a job is a job.
Yeah, I agree. That's a big one. So I kind of think this number is probably on point, but I agree there would need to be some kind of follow-up, I think. But all right, next set is companies with engaged employees, engaged again, so maybe this might be tough. So companies with engaged employees outperform those without by up to 202%. So that's 3 times more. I mean, I guess so. Those people,
that's true.
Yeah, you've met those people like, oh, I'm totally into this. I'm into the mission, so to speak, or whatever. Or even something like myself with, in the past, like, I coach now, but when I was in gyms and a personal trainer, I actually did care about getting people to where they wanted to get to. So I feel like I was more effective for the clients that way too, because I did actually care. But I feel like many people in their positions don't really care. For example, if for most people, if you gave them a check for about 5 million and they're like, quit your job right now, they would do it immediately because it's not really the job that they're engaged with. It's the money and the healthcare. That's
freaking healthcare. That's podcast number 2. I got anxiety just like you said that word. Oh, healthcare.
Man, that's one of my biggest actual annoyances with jobs is that most of the good healthcare is tied to jobs. I'll say, or rather, in terms of bang for buck ratio, because you can get good healthcare outside of a job, but holy hell, it's going to cost you like $800 a month or something like that.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
No, it's not. So a lot of people, they stay with jobs that they're not big fans of because health benefits are so great. They need that shitty job to live, essentially.
See, again, it's one of those many factors that keep people tied to their jobs. Like, earlier we were talking about like the fun office. Like, you can make like a freaking 300 item list of all the things that keep people tied. Speaking to the larger structural system of like our freaking country, of like college educations, right? The 4-year degree, and like you need a degree to get a job. It's all tied together to make people corporate slaves.
Pretty much.
It's all related.
It really is. It's really frustrating that's the case. By the way, while we're doing this, I ran elaborations on some of the engaged. So by engaged, these stats are meant to mean that they're either checked out or actively hating their jobs, which is kind of what I was guessing it would be. So does that ring true with not engaged, basically?
That makes sense
for me. Like checked out makes more sense. Like the quiet quitting, which I think is kind of a lame term. The term is literally doing your job and nothing more. I don't like that it's labeled quiet quitting. It's kind of lame.
It makes sense though. I actually just learned that term recently too, and it makes sense. I've definitely quiet quit from some places.
But the thing is, it's interesting because the way it's described, it's saying people will do their tasks and then not go the extra mile. And I think
bare minimum.
They're doing their job then, I guess, because if they needed to do more, then that more would be part of their job, in my opinion. It just seems like that quiet quitting is like passive aggression of saying, hey, why aren't you working overtime more, unpaid? That's what it sounds like to me anyway.
Yeah.
But,
well, I think it's also just like being like a freaking like engaged, like back to that word engaged, like in meetings, am I voicing some ideas? Am I voicing some thoughts? Am I responding to people? Like, I feel like it's just your basic day-to-day, how you carry yourself. Because the places that I've quiet quit from, that I stopped that too. And like, well, I'm literally just going to do this project you assign me and I'm not going to talk to anyone. If I don't need to talk to you, I'm not going to. If I don't need to get opinions, I won't. If I'm in a meeting, I'll just be like this and be like, okay, bye. Like, you know what I mean?
Okay.
To me, that's another factor of like, I am checked out. Like,
I think for me, quiet quitting and not engaged is for me, it's you don't care if you get fired. That's what it feels like for me. And
you just don't give a shit.
Yeah. At my previous place, it was like that. I feel like I quiet quit that place and that I'm like kind of looking for jobs somewhere else, but not too much because it's not like bad enough for me to leave, I'm like, I don't really
Yeah.
care. I'm kind of browsing for something better, maybe. But
Yeah. Oh, well,
it's,
by that definition, I've been quiet quitting for the past 3 years at my job.
I mean,
Oh, dang.
for everyone, you should always be on the lookout for better
Yeah.
opportunities for yourself,
Oh,
of
for
course.
sure.
But in quiet quitting, it's more like, I don't care if I get fired because I will just actually take my job hunt seriously instead of casually. And that's what that's for me. That's what it should be, instead of like, I'm just doing my job and that's it. That's come on.
Yeah.
That's not quiet quitting. It's just doing your job, in my opinion. So here's another stat that I find to be interesting. 78% of millennials, so us, prioritize work-life balance over salary when choosing a job.
Yep.
Yes.
Very,
100%.
very true. Very true.
I agree. Yeah. Because here's the thing. For me, in my position, in my field, because I'm specialized in IT, I could take myself somewhere else and make more money. I'm talking like maybe a couple dozen % higher in salary. However, I know for a fact it's going to be a pain in the ass if I do that, because the place I'm at now is so chill. It is unbelievable. I don't want to lose that. And that's worth more to me than getting some extra money by working much harder at somewhere else. So I agree. And work-life balance is super important, because I need to live my life and not live to work, you know?
Yeah. I'm in the same exact boat. Like, you took the words out of my mouth. I think I messaged this to you when we were WhatsApping, but like, that's kind of like my hesitation to like signing on right away with like something that's like, oh, they're going to make 15K more. It would be like a better title. Cause I want to be a manager someday. Right. But that's my hesitation. Cause like currently, despite all the flaws and the RTO bullshit, like my team right now is so chill. And I have that flexibility, and people know that I'm a single mom. And if I need to like, hey, like not be on this hour. And like, honestly, the chillness of my job is what allows me to like do basic things like work out. Like, I think I told you this too. Like my workouts are like integrated into my workday, because that's what works for me. Or like cook a meal, right? I would hate to move to a job where, I make, 15K more, but now I don't have time to cook and I'm expected to be online from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and I don't have time to work out. Well, what's the point then? Like, I'm losing my health and I'm losing my well-being. So I'm with you there.
You just brought something up that gave me like a PTSD right now. And it didn't affect me as much, but I know people who have been affected by this a lot. If you have a manager superior who they watch your, like on Teams or Slack or something, they watch your online status like a hawk. And if you go away or something like that, they will say, hey, are you there? Are you working? Like,
oh my God.
That's happened very slightly at a previous one, but I know people right now who that's happened to. And I'm like, that's fucked. I don't know how to describe it besides that. It's just fucked. I don't know. I hope that doesn't happen where you're at, but that is the next level micromanaging.
Yeah, it's just bad management. It's bad leadership, and people like that who don't have basic trust of their employees. And it just boils down to like respect too. I believe those people shouldn't even be in leadership positions, because like, you know what I mean? Yeah. You're just a bad manager. If you're not holding your team to the standards of like, you know what, it doesn't matter if I'm watching you or not. I know you're going to do your job, right? If you're not holding your team and you don't have their buy-in in that, then you shouldn't even be a manager.
I agree. And if that's the way that they check if you're being, active or not, then that's pretty shit too. Yeah, exactly. And for me personally, for some of my YouTube videos, I've hired thumbnail editors, and I don't care when it's done, how it's done, as long as there's a deadline, as long as it's done before that time. I don't care if you're doing this while fucking hang gliding. I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care. And I feel like more managers and superiors should have this mindset. Like, these are like the tab. This is what needs to be done. How you do that and when, not counting timelines, of course. How you do that and when, it does not matter. The point is that you can do this. That's why you're hired. So just,
Amen.
work at this. Yeah. So those people just say, hey, are you online?
Those have been my favorite managers. Historically, thinking back to like, who were my favorite bosses? It's people like that. Like at my last job, the one before the one I'm at now, my boss was like that. He would be like, here's your task. And like he would say like, this is when it's due. Get it done. I don't freaking care like what you do, like what methods you use. And like, honestly, an approach like that actually makes me want to work harder more than the micromanager. And the reason why is because like, holy shit, like he is expecting like a stellar product. And like, I can't let him down. He's placing all this trust in me. So it all boils down to trust, right? So he's not micromanaging at all. He may not check in at all between, the day he assigns it and the day it's due. But that makes me work harder, which is a really interesting.
That's hilarious because I'm the same way. It makes me want to like do the task better,
Right.
but not for the opposite reason. Because the micromanager, every time he's like, "Hey, you doing this? You do this," I want to not do it because I'm saying "fuck
Right.
you" in my head constantly. So I would do a worse job there because I'm not happy with whatever's
I'm the same
happening.
as you.
Oh
Full
man.
agreement. Full
All right.
agreement.
Next stat, 57% of employees say they're stressed at work on a daily basis. That's low, I think.
It's almost
57.
half, which
I think
means
that's low. I'm gonna be real.
yeah. Yeah, that is kind of low, huh? For America too. Especially knowing how our culture is.
Yeah. That's kind of low.
Maybe they're lying. Maybe this survey was taken and because that's the thing. It's like, sometimes people are afraid to voice how they really feel when it comes to surveys and stuff. Because like my managers will see this and I don't know.
Yeah. And I wonder what stress means, like the stress of just being there having to work or because there's specific projects happening. It could be either which way, I guess. Because some days I'm stressed at work, some days I'm not. I'm usually not. But some days I'm like, this thing is happening this day, so I am stressed. So it says daily basis, so I'm assuming they just have a constant level of stress.
Yeah, maybe like on the verge of burnout, I would assume, just like to the point where you're like, it's affecting my mental and I just don't have the ability to handle this anymore.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah. That seems kind of about right, I guess. The last one here, the average worker, I know this one's true. The average worker is productive for only 2 hours and 53 minutes per day.
I mean, that sounds like my stats. But you know what? Those 2 hours, I crank out some damn good material. So
I think this is statistically true. I'm not sure why we have 8-hour days anymore. I know they used to be, 12-hour days way back when, but I think we could lower it, to be honest, or at least lower the day, like 4 days, 3 days a week or something. Because honestly, like, let's be real. Most people, okay, so I'm sure many people have read this book, Deep Work by Cal Newport. And
I know you recommended it to me. Yeah.
It's so the concept of actual deep work is just for like basically focus, remove anything that's unimportant, like the emails and Slack messages, as you mentioned, just kill them, boot them, whatever. And then you focus on the tasks at hand and just deep dive into them for maybe 90 minutes to 4 hours or something like that. And then it's done. And the thing is with deep work is that after that, your brain is not super capable of doing things that are too involved after that. You know what I mean? Like you can obviously do little things here and there, but you're not going to be able to put that much focus into the big task after your brain's already exhausted itself. And I feel like this is basically 3 hours is telling me, and that kind of lines up. Like after 3 hours, after 3 hours of actual hard work, I don't think most people are doing much that's important or serious. So I think this lines up because the rest of the time is kind of, emails, browsing fucking web or something. It's just, whatever.
And I know a lot of people just like, so for me, for my job, we're required to like log our metrics. Like, hey, I spent X number of time on this project. So kind of tying it back to your point, I feel like a lot of people with the 40-hour work week expectation will just end up lying on their metrics just to be like, well, hey, I completed the task in 4 hours, but you want me to prove that I've spent 8 hours working today. So let me just log some random bullshit for the other 4 hours.
I support it.
Yes, I'm wondering, like, in my ideal world, we would be measured not on like the amount of time we spent on something. Oh, Megan spent 40 hours working this week, but rather completion of maybe like deliverables and tasks and projects, right? Because ultimately that's what you want to see, right? Like if you sign me a video, for example, hey, she got it done. And the time that she spent on it is irrelevant. I asked for this video this week. It got done this week. She completed and she's getting her salary. Like I feel like a world like that would be lovely. You know what I mean?
It'd be great. And honestly, it's weird because what this implies is that for that video, if it took you the full 40 hours, it has more value for some reason than if you did it in like 2 hours very quickly. It would mean if you did it in 2 hours that your skill is immense. It's awesome. If you did it the full 40, apparently because you took more time, it's more important. It's better. It's just, I don't really agree with that because like I said, the average person, honestly, I don't think they have that much in them each day. And especially with the monotony of depending how often you have to go in, your brain can only output so much. There's so many times when I'm at work and I'm like, okay, so it's like lunchtime is around 12 or 1 or whatever, right? And then after that, you have a couple hours left. And I'm thinking, man, after lunch, I'm going to get this done, this and this done. I'm like, after lunch, I'm like, I get maybe one of those things done because I'm just done. I already
Right.
blew my mental load earlier in the day. I'm like,
Yeah. And that is why one of the top productivity tips that you hear all the time is like, do the hardest tasks first, right? Or time batch accordingly based on your energy levels. Like know how your energy levels are. If you're a night owl and you like to do those hard tasks in the evening, then batch your time accordingly. So I feel like that's just tying back to this, people have to adapt and implement these kinds of productivity tips because we are working in a system that is dumb with an arbitrary, 9 to 5, 40-hour work week.
Yeah, that's exactly what I try to do as well, because I found it to be true. Today is recording this on a Monday. Early on in Monday, I was up at like 6:30, and what I did was I wrote my newsletter first thing, and then I recorded like 8 Instagram reels. So then I'm going to kind of edit it, schedule, and whatever. So the first thing done of the week is like the hard stuff that I actually have to mentally pay attention to, be engaged in, all this kind of stuff. The rest of the week, editing shit, like who cares about that? Like, doing little work stuff like that. That's less important than the big stuff, which is just setting everything up and just going for it. And this, for example, is why I'm going to have to edit this later, but this is kind of the hard part for me mentally, just like actually being awake and speaking and thinking and all this kind of stuff. Later, the editing, that's not really important. That's the less productive stuff. So it can be later. And like you said, you prioritize the actual, mentally draining tasks earlier, you actually be more productive that way. So
when I was a content creator, I had a very similar system to you, where it's like earlier in the week, I would call them like my stage days, where it's like I have to be on camera, I have to like talk. And then I would also argue though that like the prepping sometimes can be just as taxing. Like for me, I wasn't like you where I did a rough outline. I actually wrote my scripts out word for word for my podcast. So that was very time intensive. So both of those activities actually, I batched those earlier in the week, similar to you, so that the later days in the week I could spend on kind of like, they weren't easier by any means, but it's just like I didn't need to be on camera. I could be like, chilling in my pajamas or whatever.
No, I agree that the prep for some of the stuff can be harder, but in your case, the prep would be like the big task. Whereas for me, the prep is like, I have all these fucking setups and tools. Like that shit doesn't matter to me. It's actually doing it that's the hard part for me. For you, I think that's probably the easier part. Is you like setting everything up is probably the more taxing part, but it's the opposite. But either way, the point is like the stuff that's extra hard and important for you, do that shit first, and then the rest of your day is probably fucked. Like after we record this, I'm not doing shit. The editing is coming later at a different time. I'm done after this.
Yeah.
So I agree. The 3-hour metric seems about right. So I want to kind of, it's hard to do this because this is American office culture, but what kind of ideas do you think would actually be helpful to combat some of this stuff? You mentioned some earlier with basically learning how to communicate will solve most of this stuff. But what about, I don't know, more practical stuff? Like, for example, it's not ideal, but carpooling could be something, I guess.
Right.
I don't know. It still wastes your time, but you don't have to have a car, I guess. That's something.
Yeah. Or I guess to that point of commute, it's still eating up time, but maybe finding ways to, this is so cheesy, but to integrate beauty into your day. What I mean by that is like, if you can afford to ride your bike to work, okay, you're still taking time to commute, but it's a more scenic experience. You're getting some exercise in, or if you can afford to walk during your lunch break, you know what I mean? So it's like, we're all stuck in this stupid 9 to 5 drudgery, but if you can find ways to like weave in some like, some beautiful moments for yourself, at least that's what I try to do. You know what I mean? So it's not so dull and dreary and fuck my life all the time.
Yeah, or listen to an audiobook or music during the commute as well. Or if your office is cool, you can have, an earbud in and listen to whatever you want the whole day. I used to do that at some of my previous jobs because it can get pretty bleak if you don't have, entertainment there.
For sure.
Declining meetings right away, optional meetings right away is honestly one of the biggest pro tips I can give. Some people feel obligated. Yes, boundary setting it encompasses that because if people know that you just accept any optional meeting, they will be upset the day that you do decline that optional meeting. So I would say, you said, set a boundary, set an expectation.
Exactly.
Hey, if an optional meeting comes my way, it's probably getting shot down. And what that'll do is cause people to maybe think twice about even adding you onto some of these meetings to save you some mental bandwidth as well. And boundary setting is a really good one.
And it touches on a lot of things. The meeting thing, as you said, that's a really big one. And I do that too. There are some meetings on my calendar that are like more for like socializing. Like there's this weekly 15-minute thing my boss set up just to say hi. No, I'm sorry. I'm a single mom. I don't have time to like, so declined. That's one way. I think practicing the boundaries in your day-to-day communications. I think I mentioned this earlier, but when you're slacking with people and people ask you for things like requests, this or that, like, first of all, I think you said this, Kevin, like, don't feel like you have to respond right away. Sometimes people slacks, I don't even respond till end of the day because it's not important. Oh, did you watch this on Netflix last night? I don't freaking care. Let me do my job first and I'll get back to you. The other thing too is I'll just be straight up with people. Hey, you asked X, Y, and Z for me. Here's what my bandwidth is looking like this week. I don't think I can get to that until blah, blah, blah. And in the beginning, especially like, because I used to be people pleaser, it'll feel so icky to be like, oh my God, like they're not going to like me if I say that. But over time, and I swear to you, because again, I'm a recovered people pleaser, the more you set boundaries and the more you're like, hey, I'm just stating an objective fact and I'm not being rude about it, it's going to get so much easier. And now, like, I decline requests left and right, not in an asshole way, but like in the way that, you know what, oh, okay, Megan said that in a very respectful way. And to your point, Kevin, the more that you do that, the more you'll have this reputation of, you know what, her time is valuable, her skills are valuable. And now in the future, they will only come to me with requests and things that are worthwhile. So it's worth it now to practice your boundary setting because it's going to help you down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny you say that as an objective fact because I was listening to a podcast recently, the Modern Wisdom one. There's this guy talking about people pleasing, and he says something that when I heard it, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, even though it sounds rude. But basically, all people pleasers are notorious liars because they don't actually agree with the answer they gave you. They're just doing it for some other purpose to not feel bad or something like that. Right. So when a person recovers, like you have, you get more often, and then they become more of a truth teller because they're actually speaking what they're meaning in that case.
Exactly. So
I found that to be interesting. I don't know how else to. Okay, I was gonna say one way to fix a lot of office culture would be CEOs. There could be fewer of them, maybe at least the asshole ones. They could stand to be an example. I'll say, and if not, they should maybe step down from their position. I'll just say that it comes from the top. I'll say that.
Yeah. I agree with that.
That's basically that.
Don't be a manager. Tying back to our earlier commentary, don't be a manager or take on a leadership position if you don't have like the soft skills for it. A lot of people think, oh, I have a PMP, I can be a manager. No, it takes a lot more. I've had tons of managers in the past who lacked social awareness, who lacked common sense and decency, who lacked respect and consideration for people. Like if you don't have those soft skills, like you should not be in the leadership position. So I think have the self-awareness to be honest with yourself and to save other people that torture. So,
not even if they don't have the skills, it's if you don't have the trust in the people you're managing, then that's another thing. That's probably a manager problem. It's like a you problem you got to figure out over there.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah. I don't think we can be safe though. That's basically that.
That's not depressing at all.
Yeah. Well, whatever. I'm not retiring in this country, so I don't care about that. I don't care about any of that, to be honest with you. So yeah. Any parting words or anything you want to leave people with?
I do actually. I think like if I had to offer one last tip, and if I was still a content creator, this would be a perfect opportunity to plug my podcast that no longer happens. But it was a Stoic podcast, and in the spirit of Stoicism, right? It's pick and choose your battles. Like a lot of the times, again, personally and professionally, I see a lot of people getting stressed out and like just freaking going mental over things that don't matter. And like ultimately at the end of the day, when you are stressed, you ask yourself, does this matter? Ultimately, does this matter? And will this matter tomorrow, a week from now, a year from now? And a lot of the times the answer is freaking no. Or a lot of the times you can't control it. Like, the timeline is shorter, boo-hoo. Well, you know what? Freaking get over it and do what you can. You're still going to get paid. You know what I mean? Oh, this stakeholder gave me this feedback. You know what? Just freaking implement it and move on and clock out at 5. None of this shit matters anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now that I take on that mindset, it's like, it's so peaceful. I just do my freaking job and I clock out at 5. And I don't worry about anything else when I'm not in my workday. And so a lot more people should implement that because a lot of people carry the stress from work into their personal lives. I'm like, why? Like, why? Like, you're going to die someday and none of this will matter. So those are my final words.
Yeah, I agree. So my final piece of advice, I guess, would be to learn how to say, sorry, I can't. Just pull that out every so often. Just do that.
Or maybe no, sorry, just I can't.
Yeah.
No.
Just do that. And then like you said, just clock out at 5 and don't think about it. Don't think, I wonder if he's going to say, oh, well, what if you can't? No, I can't. Sorry.
Oh my God.
Whatever. Just as much as you can, try it. I promise you'd be surprised at how often it works. Just try. Sorry, I can't. Just it doesn't need you need a reason. Just I can't. I'm sorry.
It gets easier, guys. It gets easier. Boundary setting, it gets better.
Yeah. As long as you do have a job, though, like you mentioned, there are some compromises you have to just make, and you're either gonna have to deal with it or quit. Just pick one. But until then, just try to say no more, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I think that's the positive tone for the end of this podcast.
Yeah, say no.
It is though.
All right. It is. Because you gain a lot from it. So that's cool. All right. Thank you so much, Megan, for coming on. First guest. You had my first spot. There we go. Now I don't know what I'm going to do with that shit. I got to edit this first. That's like my first. See what I'm saying? I can't think about actual shit after this. By the way, Megan, where can people find you?
So I'm an ex-content creator, as I said earlier, but I do have a wonderful backlog of old podcasts and old newsletters. If you would like to see that, just go to my Instagram. I have a link tree there. It's meg.sales.14. See,
It'll be in the description.
Because it's been so long on Instagram, but I believe that is my handle. So
everything will be in the description. And guys, check out her podcast. She wasn't kidding when she says she scripted out everything. Everything is like edited like a fucking medium.
Yeah, I was insane. So that's why I'm done.
All right, that's fine. Now you're back to regular insanity, 9 to 5 insanity. So that's cool. All right. Thank you, Megan.
No problem.
Bye. Anyway, thank you for listening and or watching. And have a good rest of your day. See you next time.
Yeah, enjoy your corporate lives, people.
That was supposed to end positively.